to the No Foot Too Small podcast. My name is Jackie Selsky. I'm the Director of Marketing and Communications at No Foot Too Small. I just want to give a thank you to Storyline Multimedia for holding space for these conversations today. And I'm really excited to introduce our guests, Maahs, our Director of Family Support at No Foot Too Small, and welcome back to Robin Boudreau, our Executive Director. Thanks for being here, ladies.
Thank you, Jackie.
Thanks for having me.
And I have to comment before we get started on the matching outfits. Was this planned?
You know, when you work together long enough, there's a good chance you're going to show up twinning.
And I love the bright colors that we have. So, and in honor of our daughter, I do like to wear pink. So, but yes, it does happen more often than I would probably admit.
It's perfect. It's perfect. So we are here today to really talk about family support and what that is. But I want to start with, Allie, your story and how you came to find No Foot Too Small. So I'm going to give you the floor. Let us know.
All right. Well, yeah, No Foot Too Small obviously has a dear place in my heart. But our story begins when my husband and I, shortly after college, got married. We thought we wanted to have a lot of kids. I naively thought it would be easy. I professionally worked with children for a living. And so just really naively thought that that would be an easy journey for us. And come to find out, it wasn't. We struggled with infertility for many years. And at the time, it didn't seem like anybody else around us was having that same struggle. So that felt super isolating. We also weren't very public about it at the time. I am very much now, but wasn't then. And so we carried that pretty silently while everyone around us felt like they were getting pregnant real easily. And so finally, after a lot of years and medical help, we finally did get pregnant in January of 2013. It was the first grandchild to be on my side of the family, so everybody was excited for us. Again, blissfully and naively, I kind of thought, infertility was our cross to bear. Like we'd already done our hard. And so that pregnancy seemed what I thought would be typical. It was our first. So again, didn't really know any differently. At our 20-week ultrasound, we went in and I'll never forget the door shutting when the doctor came in because it didn't even shut, but she had tears in her eyes. And I knew what was coming next probably wasn't going to be good, but really had no idea. Again, she sat down with us, cried with us, and shared that our baby, they could see on the ultrasound, had a condition called anencephaly, where the brain, the head, and the skull had not formed. Kind of going into a shock mode. I don't remember exactly what I comprehended in that moment. I think I thought, the baby's just brain dead and it'll be okay. Again, not fully understanding and being able in a place to understand that. But really quickly, we understood the severity and the harsh reality that we would not be bringing a baby home into our family. And so we went home, really held on to each other and our families. And it was about a week later that we delivered her at the University of Iowa. We were able to have our parents come, which was super meaningful. They were able to hold her. We were able to spend time with her, which was very meaningful for us. But if anybody knows this hard reality, the hardest part is being at the hospital and turning your baby over for the final time. So we did that, as you just really have no other choice. And left, and remembered thinking, obviously our worlds were shattered, devastated, to say the least. It was Memorial Day weekend, and I still get really emotional in a happy way that our friends and family showed up for us. I know not everybody has the support system that we do have and did have, but people left their lake homes and their family vacations to come celebrate at our service and memorial for her, a baby they never met, a baby they didn't know, a baby they didn't see. And so I do think the way they showed up was really incredible and was sacrificial of their own time. So that, again, was just super validating that even this life that we didn't know all that well meant something to others. So again, that was just an incredible example of showing up for people. They didn't know what to do either, right? They didn't know what to say, but they showed up, and that was the most important thing. And then, everybody walks away, and it's like, now what, right? Like that, I just remember feeling like the rest of the world is still moving, and mine is shattered on the floor, right? Like we were still heartbroken and devastated. We knew we would move forward, but how we would carry her on would be something that we really didn't know at the time. So we named her Naomi Grace. I have her footprints on my wrist here. And that's really, I want to say, like the beginning of finding No Foot Too Small.
You need to start going like this, like where you hold it all the way up.
Okay. Can you see
so you
it?
can actually see it?
I can't turn my wrist really well. Can you see it?
Did you have that tattoo before you found No Foot Too Small?
No.
Okay.
So I actually waited 10 years. It's my one and only tattoo. I knew from the beginning, just like Robin wears her footprint. I think especially because, or at least I can speak for myself, having a baby with a massive deformity, having that piece be our story, her feet were perfect. So I guess I didn't share that part of the story, but before we left, that was the last thing. Like we held her feet, and I joke that one of them is kind of wide like my husband's, and I have a more narrow, higher arch, and you can almost like see that in the prints. So it was like kind of a piece of each of us. And so again, the footprints were just massively important, I think, for that reason in my own story. But then, when I found No Foot Too Small, I just felt like, wow, that couldn't be more true and speak to me in a special way.
So how did you first hear of No Foot Too Small? And I want to make a comment because I appreciate you sharing your experience with people showing up for you, because I think everyone who knows you and those who are listening for their first time and are going to have the privilege of getting to know you after hearing your story and joining No Foot Too Small will know that that is exactly what you do every single day for all of our families. And so I think it's beautiful for you to give credit to the people who did that for you in the time you really needed, because not only is that meaningful to you, but you are paying that forward just in a profound way every day through this organization. So I think it's special that you share where that comes from and how you learned how important that is. So thank you for that too.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a perfect segue because finding No Foot Too Small was really Robin showing up for me. And a lot of people have heard this, but I kind of call her a stranger on my doorstep. And I'll get to that in a second.
And now you dress like me.
And now I dress like you. She was a stranger. And I joke because people can see us as coworkers and dear friends, but we're only united by one of the worst days of our lives. And so, and truly a stranger on my doorstep. But how I found No Foot Too Small, I just remember seeing the article that Robin had published that said, we're going to celebrate Bo's first birthday. Nobody's talking about pregnancy and infant loss, but if you've experienced it, we welcome you to join us for this benefit. And again, the words just spoke to me, but also reading Robin's story spoke to me. It was very similar to ours. And so for the first time, it felt like I'm not alone. Right? Just seeing those stories. I know we've talked about whether it's books, all the different resources out there, but to find something that just makes you feel not alone. Our friends and family, wonderful, didn't get it, right? Nobody had really experienced it in that way. So even a stranger's words felt like, oh my gosh, somebody like me. So I remember reading that. I know you have our first email exchange.
Oh, I saved all of them.
Yeah, I forgot about that. That would be fun.
Every time a family would reach out in those early years, I would save their emails.
Yeah. So I don't remember exactly all what those words said, but knew we would go to that benefit. And part of that was capturing footprint canvases. And so taking our footprint and taking it, like blowing it up onto a canvas. So she would show up on your doorstep, schedule a time when I know you were full-time working and we had our other careers then, and to take that photo. And so again, I don't really remember a lot about that, but
I do.
Showing up, right? She just showed up on our doorstep to validate a life. And again, that's, I think, so much what we're seeking is the validation that this life mattered, not just to us, but to others too. So that was kind of the first moment, I guess I remember. And to your point, it's just showing up. It's not that Robin had knew exactly what to do or say. It was just like, I'm going to start somewhere, and it starts with showing up. And then we navigated so much together.
Well, and Robin says she remembers quite a bit about that day. What do you remember?
I can remember looking for the house, pulling up, parking on the side of the street. I mean, I was nervous and all.
Sure.
I'm walking into a stranger's house, right? Walking in the front, you talking about, well, maybe we can sit in the living room. And then we ended up out on the front step because I'm very particular about the lighting of our photos. So we had to go outside. And the ring you were wearing, I remember pretty vividly.
Those footprint canvases have become such a big part of a visual representation of No Foot Too Small for a lot of our families. So we'll have to share a link in the show notes or something so people can see exactly what we're referencing.
Absolutely.
Their special photos.
Well, for a lot of us, that's all we had, right? And I know Ryan and I didn't talk about that in our episode, but we didn't get to see him or hold him or anything. So all we had was that footprint. And later, you just want this proof that they existed. And for us, that was our only proof that he was here. So that was the thought behind, doing those canvases for everybody.
So how did your paths continue to cross after that first?
She just kept showing up at my house.
Said you couldn't get rid of me.
Couldn't shake her.
Yeah, I say that No Foot Too Small for me was where my personal and professional worlds collided. I'd worked in nonprofit my entire life. And obviously this was something very personal and dear. And so truly just kind of kept showing up in the ways that I could help and lean in. So there's a lot of others on the team that leaned in their special gifts and assets to the team. But really, I think probably started to really take off was when we launched or when we hosted the first moms group. Again, I'd been in kind of a family support role in other nonprofits, so that's kind of what spoke to me. I had even run hospital support groups for a living, so I know maybe we can touch on that. But it was just being able to connect with others. The profound connection that we had for somebody who got it, I wanted to not only selfishly continue to feel that, but also give that to others. I don't think it matters what hardship club you're in, but if you have people that understand it, it is just profoundly transforms that experience. And so I have felt that to my core here and just wanted that for others too. And beyond really a support group, and we can talk about why we don't even call it that, but it's just true connection and community. And so why did I keep showing up is just this true, authentic connection and community. I remember Robin sending, spoiler alert, we did go on to have 2 living children who are now 9 and 10, but I remember Robin sending, a baby gift for one of those. I mean, we weren't even a formal organization, not what we are today, but, getting that beautiful gift in the mail that wasn't just our loss, but it was life after loss and what that looked like. And everything we did with No Foot Too Small, we could talk about our losses or we could laugh or we could have fun. But it was just that underlying uniting and a great space of truly friendships for a lifetime that we were forming then. Little did we know, I guess, what it would be 11 years later, but just kept going because it just kept feeling right.
I think that's the running theme. We didn't know how big this was going to get. Nobody could have predicted this at all.
No.
I want to go back to your mention of the first group. I know there's a little bit of a story there. So, Robin, do you want to tell us
I think
how
Alex
that
could tell
started?
the story.
I like how you tell about how you got approached about why we should host groups, why we even started there, because this is, I think, good.
So, like I had said in the other episode, we had been hosting the No Foot Too Small benefit, which is now the gala, right, for 3 years. We had raised $90,000. We were giving it all to the March of Dimes. And it was really in that moment that I felt this shift that we needed to do something different. We needed to do something that would serve our lost families right now. It was in that moment that I had approached the University of Iowa, suggested that we focus on building birthing and bereavement suites. They, to my surprise, agreed. And we started this formal partnership with the University of Iowa. Fast forward, not too long actually, and Dr. Greiner, who now serves on our board, had reached out and said, hey, why don't you come up to the department? The physicians and I want to talk to you. We have an idea about how we can partner. And I thought, well, I'm happy to come up there, but didn't we just partner to build a birthing and bereavement suite? I'm not sure what else we're partnering on. And so I went up there and they were all lovely, but essentially looked at me and said, we think you should host support groups. Well, again, like I had mentioned in the last episode, I went to school for family marriage therapy, right? So that wasn't a far-fetched thing. Also, as a lost mom, now our peer-based model, that made a lot of sense. In that moment, though, they also said, we would like to offer you the basement of the new clinic at Iowa River Landing. And I thought, you know what, Andrea, Dr. Greiner, with all due respect, we are happy. I am happy to host these support groups, but we are not going back to the hospital, right? We're not going to sit in the basement of a clinic because the way I felt in that moment was, one, I probably would have never gone to a support group. That's just me personally. But I absolutely wouldn't go back to a hospital or a clinic to do that because then it feels like there's something wrong with me, right? I must have done something wrong. Why am I going to a medical facility? And so I said, yes, enthusiastically, I'll do this. But it will be at a restaurant in a private space with food and drink. And we're going to come together like a group of girlfriends, whether or not we know each other, right? In a place that feels safe, but comfortable. So that was the yes. And now the rest has followed.
Yeah, I think it even challenged my vision of what I knew to be like a standard support group. And so that was something very early on I felt really called and drawn to, because I think when the support looks and feels different, it is different, right? That we're not in the hospital, that we're sitting around as family and friends around food and drink sends a different message. Instead of something is wrong with you and you're sad about your baby who's died, which is very normal to feel, instead of you need to go get support, it's like, here's a community to journey with, right? And so it feels different. And then the transformation of community, I think, happens very different. To your point, I think our peer-based model has been incredible, right? So still to this day, while we'll offer 106 groups this year, it's all a peer-based model. So it's other people who've been on the journey at different stages. Doesn't necessarily matter, but it's somebody who's walked in that can share in their experiences. Here's how I've dealt with that, or this is what's helped me. And, sitting around a table, we laugh, we cry. It's just like family, right? And so just the community that is there is really neat. You were mentioning the first group. I call it the first unofficial moms group. A lot of people who may or may not know me, but I'm very comfortable talking. I love talking.
Weird.
And
We couldn't guess.
Yeah, right. But I want people to know that going to your first group, or whatever you want to call that, is not easy. So there was 5 of us, I think, that first unofficial group where Robin just gathered a few of us together who were helping with the benefit at the time. But it was a dinner and we were going to share our stories. And I think there was 5 of us around that table. And I remember sweating and being anxious.
Was this the night at Atlas?
Yes. And I can remember I was not going to share a word until I heard everybody else's story, right? Like we were still in that moment like strangers. And while Robin knew each of our stories individually, we did not know each other's. And so I waited for everybody. I don't remember anything that came out of my mouth that night. At the end, I said something. But what I will tell people about going to a group, I always say, you don't have to share because you don't. But sometimes you can also receive a lot of support even when not sharing. So that first night, it was Katie Stedman, who is just like authentic, organic. She's not going to hold anything back.
Yeah,
she's raw.
That's incredible.
Raw and beautiful in all the ways. And it was her words that really spoke to me because they were words I didn't have yet. It was like, wow, yeah, that's exactly how my heart feels, but I couldn't like formulate it. And so, again, wherever you're at in your grief, we always say you're never late. You're always right on time if you show up to a group. But it's so true that like whatever you need, and you might not know what you need, profound things can come from those experiences, whether you're sharing or you're listening, whether you're nervous or you're proud to talk about your angel, right? Doesn't matter where you're at in that. So I just think it's important that people hear that, because it's not easy to go into a room of strangers and share your most vulnerable days. That's the truth.
So we do owe Dr. Greiner a ton of credit. I don't know that we would be doing this without her nudge. So, while we didn't go back to the hospital, it has really evolved into something beautiful, and now is largely led out by Allie. So
I love how intentional the format has been since the beginning, but I also think what is so unique is the intentionality behind how you name the groups. So Robin, if you maybe want to touch a little bit on that.
Yes, I don't know that it's anything profound other than for me, I just don't like the term support group. It doesn't mean it's good, bad, any which way. I wanted to feel like we're having a girls' night, right? Like it's a mom's group. It's the men's social club. It is folks just coming together and building community. I think support group just has a different connotation to it. And while we are supporting each other, it's just different than that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was just thinking some of the feedback we now offer men's social club, as you mentioned, was an evolution, right, to support dads. And actually more than once, a dad has emailed me after going to a group and said something like, I thought this was just going to be the sad dads, right? Like nobody wants to really go show up and cry, right? Like it's not like, oh, I want to sign up for this. This is going to be fun, right?
And then they find out it actually is.
Right. Yeah. And so they're like, it's just funny. The sad dads has kind of come up as a joke as we're more, it's not that at all.
What do you think? A t-shirt this year? Sad dads?
There you go. So yeah, it's just, to your point, I think in naming it different, hopefully we set naming and then it looks and feels different, that it does set a different kind of cultural expectation. Mm-hmm. To your point, I think support group does have a certain stigma around it, right or wrong. And so again, yeah, we call it a mom's group and a men's social club. And, people kind of know what to expect, at least after that first group.
Well, you said we have 106 groups in 2025.
We do. I think I just put the last 4 on the calendar today. So yes, the evolution has been incredible. So I just did that graph not that long ago for the board, and it was in 2018, our first, what I call first unofficial group. And now we are here this many years later with 106 groups this year. So the evolution from moms groups, I think, to adding the men's social club, right? Recognizing that men have a space here too. And I think that was something we always knew. Mm-hmm. But I think, at least I can share the moment it really clicked for me, was a mom sharing in a group how her husband had seen their baby be resuscitated. And that wasn't her story because she was still under other medical supervision at the time. But she knew that was his story, and it was something that maybe they didn't want to share. Again, no judgment on grief in a couple or in any situation, but it was this idea that he has that story that with no place to share that, right? Like maybe he doesn't want to traumatize his wife by sharing that experience, but that he needed his own place. We joke in the groups, what happens in Vegas stays in group, it stays in Vegas, what happens in group stays in group, right? And so that moms and dads can have a safe place to share whatever it is. Grief is ugly and messy and sad and angry and all the things. And so a place to just truly share that was the moment that of like, duh, of course they need a space of their own.
That they may not even be able to share with each other,
right?
Though, right?
Yeah. So I think, again, we always knew that, but we needed some leadership and some people to say, hey, let me help as a peer lead this out. And so that's been a credible evolution, I think, of our support in that space. And again, we could talk about stigma and men and grief all day long, but again, we're starting to see that really grow and I think take off. And so that's been amazing. And then I think the other evolution, big change for us was going virtual.
I'll never forget that. That was April of 2020. And it was actually Haley Admire, one of our OG Angel ambassadors, who suggested that we now host our groups virtually during the pandemic. And I thought, hell no. That was actually my immediate response. If we can't hug each other, if we can't sit there and share a glass of wine, right, then for me, it was a hard no. And she pushed and pushed, and they all made their case. And finally I said, okay, fine, we'll try it, right? I caved to the COVID-19. And lo and behold, they were right. They did still show up. And now I'll let Allie speak to this as well, but watching them fly in from around the country to meet for the first time at the annual gala, right, after connecting virtually for any period of time is beautiful.
Yeah, I think what we learned, I mean, this is true of a lot of the pandemic, right? But I always say like your own loss is the worst. You don't get like yours is better, right, yours is worse. But those that lost during the pandemic didn't have somebody to touch and feel. Some of them laid in a hospital bed for months and still delivered.
They didn't have their spouse, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Or partner. Yeah.
And so their grief is compounded, right? The level of isolation, right? This is already an isolating place to be, and they were experiencing it on a whole nother level. So once we lost once we launched those virtual groups, it was incredible to see people, coming in, and people were stuck at home. So what else to do? And we had to support our own wine and pizza and drinks and food. But we were still able to connect. And I mean, everybody can speak from their own experiences about kind of that virtual connection, right? Start, stop, and the camera and all the technology pieces. Would this really work, to your point? And you alluded to it, but the moment we had several fly-in, drive-in from other states for gala, whatever that was, 2 years later when we could kind of really come together, because they had only met in the virtual moms group, blew my mind, right? That the connection was so powerful. You wanted to come to Iowa in October.
Iowa.
I think Iowa's great, but we're coming from North Carolina. That just really blew my mind that the connection was that powerful. I mean, I knew it, I'd felt it, I'd seen it, but to see that kind of, experience for somebody else was really amazing.
Where are some of the places we're seeing families join from now that this is so much more accessible?
Yeah, I think, we still have a large following in Iowa, and I won't skirt that, that's a lot of where our program and support and connection is.
Currently.
But we have pockets all over. I won't even say pockets. We just have people joining in who find us. We have California, Minnesota, Nebraska, North Carolina. We get some people on the East Coast from time to time. So really,
Seattle, Washington.
Yep. Really people from all over. One of the fun facts now that we're kind of starting to be able to really track our growth, because we were little and young, we tracked it in our brains in an Excel form for many, many years. But now that our brains need to hold more, it needs to go somewhere. So now that we're able to really collect that through our family database program, I can actually report 25% of the families who sign up with us are out of the state of Iowa, which I think is really, again, we could kind of guess, but we didn't really know that until we were capturing that. So through our virtual moms group, but we also have a private online space for moms and dads. And that's an incredible resource anytime. As we're sitting here right now, a mom saying, I'm going back to work tomorrow and I'm scared about what to say. Or a mom last night at 9:00 said, my milk's coming in, what do I do? And in real time, 40 moms are sharing their resource as somebody who's walked that journey, not having to Google it or call a clinic that's going to get back to you tomorrow when you need it now, right? So we are able to truly help a family anywhere, anytime is what I say through those programs. And it is neat to see, I guess, I don't know, neat or heartbreaking the right word, but
Brutal.
When a family, I'm thinking of one in particular, physician out on the West Coast who's like, there's nothing like this here, right? And so she can sense that our community is different. Even if there's a local support group, I think people find this to be uniquely different, a different layer of support. And so it breaks my heart a little bit because I just want to fly out to, be with each one. And we're figuring out how to be those things better over time. But yeah, it's neat that they still feel that connection regardless of where they're at.
What do you think it is that makes it so different?
I think I would say one of our core values is to be authentic and inclusive. And so show up as you are is a big message, right, that we send. Just be you, right? And so I think once people come in nervous, anxious like I did and see that I can say whatever. It doesn't have to be put together. I can cry. I can laugh. I think that piece builds, and that vulnerability builds connection really fast, right? When you share your worst day with a stranger, you get close really fast. You might know a lot about their worst day and not their favorite color, and you become great friends. But I think
yours pink?
It always has been. I think you stole that from me.
Right.
And so I think that's a piece of it. And I think the inclusivity. So we support all loss. I think No Foot Too Small was well known in our early days for second and third trimester losses because the first 10 of us, that was our story. As we've grown, we've always included all loss, but we have more families, right, from early miscarriages to infant losses. So we see a lot more families in those spaces leaning in. Again, with our new database, I can actually say 40% of the families we serve are actually a first trimester loss. And a lot of times those families are uninvalidate themselves. They're like, well, mine isn't as far along, right? Mine doesn't matter. And that's the last thing that we say. We say, come on in, like, right? You're all welcome here. And the worst loss is your own. So there is no comparison in our space. I think that's something I wish the whole world could see, because the rest of the world still compares it on a gestational level, I think. And so I think when they come in and they feel that, I think that's what's uniquely different. And then they get a sense of pride to be able to share their stories. I think it builds and empowers them to journey that in whatever way is right. Robin and I, while we might be friends and have similar stories, our grief journeys are still different. And so we support each other, but it's okay if, somebody else does something different, or I like what you do, I'm going to try that for my angel's birthday, or things like that.
You read a really beautiful quote at the start of most of the groups that speaks to that, just to set the tone. And I've experienced that myself, showing up for the first time, absolutely terrified, not wanting to speak, not knowing what to expect. And I imagine we have a lot of families listening today who are feeling the same, or feeling like you did, or, Robin said, I'm not sure if I would have ever even attended one of these. I'm sure there's a lot of people all across the spectrum. So walk us through what it actually is, like what happens in these groups.
Yeah. So you mentioned, I really do try to set the tone at the beginning of everybody is welcome here. And again, your loss matters, right? And so from there, it is truly organic and authentic, and it is meant to be whatever the needs of the group are that night. I think we've learned over time our sweet spot for a number is going to be around 10 to 12. If we get much past the size of 15 in a group, it's sharing, but it's like you, next. And then it's not really fostering community and connection, right? So our groups aren't like that. You might share, I might cry, I might laugh. You might say me too on something somebody says. So it's really conversational. So again, if we have a community physically, so in our in-person groups, if they get much larger, we try to break off into smaller groups for that reason. And then virtually, it's real easy to hit the button and then you go into smaller groups. That's my favorite. That's why easy to manage. And actually, we've done that a lot of different ways. We've done it by geographical location, how we divvy up the group. We've done it by loss types. We've done it with some moms get really close and kind of journey a similar time frame of grief. And so they say, hey, will you put us in a group together? And so that's been really good. One of the things I think we do well too is like customize and individualize your support. Again, what we all need is very different. And so just being able to do that in that space as well. So the conversation usually just goes wherever it needs to go. Occasionally, we might really focus or on a certain topic, right? It's the holidays and it's like, how are you honoring your angel this Christmas? And people talk about ideas with their stockings, or, we do an ornament tradition that we have at No Foot Too Small. And so, kind of just depending on the time of year, we might kind of hit on a topic like that. Going back to school, how do you fill out the paperwork for maybe your living children and include your angel, right? That might be a topic we kind of go down and share experiences. So really it tends to be the needs of the group and those who show up. And just kind of navigating whatever that might be. One of my favorite things to see and witness, and I think the value we provide, is the real-time resource referral. And what I mean by that is if we're sitting in this group around the table together and I'm really struggling, somebody's like, I've been there, right? And I asked for medication from my doctor, or I did EMDR therapy. People start to share that. And I'm like, oh, what is that? Tell me more. I've never heard of that therapy. Somebody can then share their experiences. And then the next thing is, well, where do I find that? And she's like, here's who I saw. She's taking patients still, right? Or, gosh, I wish I wouldn't have waited so long to seek medication help, right? And so while I would love to think our groups are great and are everything for everybody, they might not be, and that's okay. But the other additional resources and referrals that are real time are so valuable. The mom that says, I've been really dragging my feet on, I know I should go to therapy, I know I should, but I haven't. And then the mom that says, I'm calling you tomorrow to make sure you signed up, or do you need me to help make that call, right? Like that piece is an incredible gift. That just happens again in real time. You can go online and Google, and that doctor might not be taking new patients, or, navigating that all can be so tricky, especially when you're deep in grief. So the way the community really shows up and supports, holds each other accountable, again, on the hard days, the good days, they're just truly there for each other.
And anybody can show up to these groups, right? They're free. We have really generous sponsors throughout all of these communities that are holding space for us and feeding us and giving us those glasses of wine, and same with the virtual conversations as well. So I think that's important for our families listening to know that when you see we have a group tonight, you can show up tonight. We're there when you need it.
Correct.
Yep. It's always hard. We say like it's, hey, we're so excited to see you. You know, like we always joke that doesn't seem like the right thing to say. So I have to reframe that too. I'm glad you found us. We hate that anybody has to be a part of this club. The group termed it Worst Club, Best People a couple years ago because it truly does feel like some of the best connections. But truly, we're here for some of the worst days. And so while we're not glad anybody has to be there, we are glad and hope you find the same support that we've all felt and experienced.
Yeah, I think Robin has mentioned this in several speeches before too, that, you know, when you started No Fit Too Small, you really believed the birthing and bereavement suites were going to be the most important work that this organization did. And they are. Those are critical projects.
Absolutely.
And those are changing the standard of care. But share with us, you know, how your thought on that has kind of evolved.
You bet. That's the truth. When I approached the University of Iowa with this light bulb moment, right, that we need to build birthing and bereavement suites, I really believed that that would be the most important work of No Fit Too Small. But I think what we've learned over the last 5, 6, 7 years is that the most important work we're doing is actually all of this family support. It is the large scale events, anything from blooms and butterflies to golf to gala, everything in between. While from the outside, those might look like fundraising events, those are events that are building community, right, and bringing families together. And then all of those 106 moms groups, men's social clubs, virtual groups, that is the most important work because so organically these families are coming together and then supporting each other outside of No Fit Too Small. Allie and I just had this conversation the other day. We are here to be a resource, right, and to help heal their hearts. But we're also providing them the community that then takes care of each other, right? We don't have to be the end all be all for their entire journey. We will be if they need us to be, but they will find their twin, right? Who walks alongside them outside of our programs and events. And I think that is the most important work. It's kind of like equipping a child as they're growing up, right? We're not going to take care of them forever. We're going to prepare them, equip them, give them the resources to be healthy and strong and move forward.
And we're doing that in ways beyond these groups too. Now Allie, I want you to share a little bit about some of the other projects you have going on too, because not only are you trying to provide that support and those resources in that really intimate setting, but you're doing that for hospitals, you're doing that in the workplace, you're doing that in schools. I mean, you personally are really spearheading that. Talk to us about that a little bit.
Yeah. First, I wanted to say something about what you just said. Building this community and kind of for the next generation. I don't know if that's the right word, but we just joke we're getting old, right? And so
Hey, speak for yourself.
Well, you're older. But being relevant to people in pregnancy and infant loss, right? That's a wide range of when you can get pregnant, right? But the hard truth is we are kind of edging out of that space. And so I think what you were talking about is just being really important, that you do need to identify with people who are like you, right? And so that I might be that for somebody, but it might be somebody else in the group, AKA your twin or whatever. And so it is so neat to see them find what I found, right? That stranger on the doorstep, and how they keep supporting each other. So that is truly one of the most beautiful things to keep seeing.
Did we just kickstart a new hashtag challenge of the No Fit Too Small twin? where people are going to start sharing their photos of themselves showing
It
up.
doesn't even have to be that you dress alike or look alike. It's just that your souls are just twinning.
Yeah.
Right? The story could even be different.
Yeah.
It's just that you found your person in loss.
We have so many of those stories.
Oh,
too.
yeah. I remember that one of those groups saying to somebody like, I think you're cool. Do you want to be friends? Like, it was so awkward. I literally think that's what I said. I thought she was cool. Her story was nothing like mine. The lost story wasn't the same at all. But it was just that connection, right? And now one of my best and dearest friends. So truly wanting them to find that within our community.
I think I said the same thing to you when I met you.
Also,
cool
can I just tell that story really quick?
Yeah.
And then you can answer the question about the other programs. So I think I know who you're talking about. One of the OG. And I will never forget the very first night she showed up at a mom's group. We were actually out at Bella Sala and Tiffin. Mel, who's now our director of events, graciously hosted us. But Haley walked in and she was still pregnant, right? So all of us are sitting around this table grieving the children that we'd lost. She shows up pregnant, preparing to lose Matthew, right? And so profoundly, wisely saying, I know I'm going to need this community, right? And equipping herself and her husband in that loss ahead of time. I mean, it was the most incredible thing I've ever seen.
I think she read a book that said, find your tribe, like find your people. And so, yeah, she said, I came to try to find those people. And so, yeah, I said, I don't know how I'm going to help you in this journey, but we're here.
Also, isn't today his birthday?
Tomorrow's
Matthew's birthday.
Matthew's birthday.
Happy birthday.
Yes.
Yeah.
It gives me goosebumps. I mean, we always talk about our mission here is to light the way for families who follow us in loss, but the courage that it takes to keep that flame lit, to light the way
It's a choice.
something we don't really stop and pause and admire enough. And so, yeah, the incredible families who've been the first, right? Like you two were two of the first, and we have many families who were our firsts, and they're the reason that this story is what it is today. So I love that we keep giving them shout outs.
Yes.
It's what this space is for.
Lots of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So to answer your other question, all the things that we're doing now, Robin says it a lot, and I agree. If we have a mission, right, to celebrate, unite, and build, but if we do nothing else than change the dialogue around pregnancy and infant loss, then we will have won. And I believe that so much because we live in this space, and then I go out into the rest of the world, and I'm like, oh yeah, they still don't really talk about it. We got a long way to go. But really in the last year, I think there's two spaces that I'll kind of focus on that I think we have an opportunity to really help. And it's just an emerging need, right? It wasn't us going to knocking on doors. It was them saying like, hey, we need your help in this, and you are the expert. And for so long, I was like, we're not the experts. And then I was like, oh, we are the experts. We lived it. We do know what could be better. We do know from the experiences how we can continue to change this for future families. So while our birthing and bereavement suites are a project we do with hospitals, we are doing so much more with hospitals too. And I think that's really around kind of an educational piece, right? Here's who we are as a resource. So every day, in fact, I got another email this morning about a hospital that was like, hey, can you come speak to our staff and share who you are, what you do, and how we can get families connected to us as quick as possible. The thing I hate most is a mom who comes to a group and says, I wish I would have had this 2 years ago, right? I didn't know about this. Like, we can help anybody now, right? So making sure that clinics, hospitals are aware of us. Loss happens anywhere, right? It happens at home. It happens in a clinic. It happens in the ER. It happens in the birthing and bereavement suites. Happens in a NICU. And so getting our resources is exhaustive, right? Because of that. But that's not something we'll stop doing, and we'll continue to try to do just better and better. Last year just really became aware for us that the ER, I think, is a space that's really typically under-equipped to help families, right? They are trained to treat and discharge. And our families don't need disregarded or discharged, right? They need love, compassion, support, validated. So we're really exploring what that could look like to better equip ER spaces, I think, because that's kind of a universal problem, I would say, that I see and hear in the spaces from our groups. In stories that are quite traumatic, and if you have a lot of trauma in your story, I think that just makes the healing so much more complicated. It's heartbreaking for sure, but trauma is also another layer for a lot of stories if it wasn't handled super well. And then the other space is workplaces. Talk about a place that doesn't want to cry, talk about feelings. You're told, be professional, all of those things. We actually partnered with Principal Financial last year to offer our first workplace wellness panel, and it was incredibly well received. They're an international company, so we offered it in person and a virtual aspect, and really had a panel that had a male on there, right? A lost dad to share his story. But really the format was to share, why loss matters, right? Why talking about grief matters in the workplace, because it impacts your workplace, whether you're talking about it or not, right? It impacts employees. It impacts, supervisors who don't know how to, handle the situation. and just kind of what to say and what not to say, right? What are some things that people that maybe haven't had any kind of experience like this can do better for their colleagues and their workplaces? And then really who we are as No Foot Too Small. Again, here we are a resource to your workplace. And then really followed up, in their case, they were really able to showcase some really great benefits, actually some policy changes they had made around pregnancy and infant loss.
Oh, wow.
So that was really neat. I think they had some looser language around early loss, which made it confusing for supervisors to navigate and also for the employee to feel quite unvalidated. And so they actually made some changes, and I think a few others. So they were really able to showcase, hey, we are supporting, here's our EAP program, here's not only No Foot Too Small, but here is how we as a company are changing this conversation and supporting our employees. So it's a program that we have pretty well lined up that we can customize to a certain workplace, and excited to be able to do more of those this year to keep changing that conversation and ultimately supporting families.
Yeah, so if there's a business listening today, how can they reach you if they're interested in hosting one of these panels in their workplace?
Yeah, the best way would just be probably directly through email. So mine is allison@nofoottoosmall.org. ALLISON. Did I do that right?
Yes.
Okay. You can find me on the website as well.
We'll put it in the show notes.
There we go. Just directly reach out. And again, it's a kind of a customizable journey for each company. So excited to explore what that can look like and keep changing the dialogue.
Yeah, I think it's beautiful. We're really filling the gaps, right? The gaps of everyday life where there's nothing, or it feels like there's nothing.
Right.
No Foot Too Small is there. And Allie is our beautiful leader in making that happen. So I want to ask you what you're most proud of.
In my work here?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know if there's a most proud of. I don't think I could pick a most proud. I just am super grateful that my worst day created some of my best days. And it sounds cliche, but it just seems like when I've had one that just can't be surpassed, there's another. So every moment that I have to be able to give to somebody what Robin was to me on my doorstep, right? Those moments will never get old because it transformed and changed my life. And that is my hope for them too. It's so hard to know what my life and grief journey would have looked like without No Foot Too Small, because I was kind of just there from the beginning and never left. But it truly is.
I'm glad you didn't leave, for the record.
Good. Well, it's going to be a while. But no, it just truly just never, it doesn't get old. Being able to see families have kind of those moments just of massive support, a place where you can always celebrate. I think I worry that if I didn't have this community 11, 12 years later, people would be like, she's still talking about that baby, right? Like, I feel that's what I would have started to feel, because the truth is less people message me on her birthday, right? That's just the truth over time. And instead, I don't need that validation from them anymore because I have a community who gets it. So if I feel hurt by that, I can reach out to them and say, hey, nobody said anything. Will you guys be there for me, right? And so I just know that I wouldn't be the same person without the space, that I don't shy away from ever getting tired of saying her name or sharing her story. And what I usually find, we joke a lot about this, is how you share your story in the groups and stuff. But anytime you try to skirt it, anytime I'm like, oh, I'm not going to share right now at the bar about my baby that died. But when I do, there's almost always somebody that says me too. And now we've given them the space, or I know somebody. So maybe what I'm most proud of is the courage to keep talking about her in any space, even if your voice shakes, right? Even if you're not sure how it's going to come out. But
even when you ugly cry?
Even when you ugly cry, which there's a lot of crying. But I'm not afraid of that. But just the courage to continue to do that, and the space to do that, is what No Foot Too Small has done, and to see that for so many others.
And I asked Ryan and Robin this too, but I mean, we are obviously so grateful that Naomi led you here. What would you say to her today?
It's been true probably since the beginning. So we named her Naomi Grace, and I didn't know what that meant at the time, but I knew I was going to need a lot of grace to get through. And I would need a lot of grace from her. What I would tell her is just how thankful I am, because she changed how I loved. And I think I love, or I hope that I love in a much more unconditional way. As simple as that is a love without judgment. That's what I think our community represents. We don't care when, why, how you're here, but that we can just love in a very deeper way. So I am very grateful, and I would say that I am grateful for the love that she gave me, that I hope I give to others.
We're so grateful. I feel like we need to redo the set so we can all like hug. Hugging is a big thing. And
yes,
too small,
yes.
So
We are
beautiful.
huggers.
We are huggers. I have socks that say something about hugging on them. So yeah, I will always embrace that, and stranger,
No pun
lost,
intended.
whatever. Yeah, exactly. So I do love that.
I think it's beautiful, and the unconditional love is really what you offer to all of our families every day. So I'll ask the last question. If either of you, if there's anything you want families listening today, whether they've been with you since the beginning or they're brand new to No Foot Too Small, what would you like them to know?
I feel a little bit redundant just because we just shared this in the other episode, but just how proud I am of all of them, right? And how grateful I am that they continue to trust us. We won't always get it right as we grow and scale. We face many challenges, but their hearts and their angels are always at the center of the table. Everything that we're doing as we grow.
I think we always joke about new or old families. I don't necessarily like that term, but some of the OGs, originals, just how thankful I am for them to continue to lean in all the ways that they have and supported. I don't ever think I'm ahead in the journey of loss, right? We're all in it together, regardless of our years from our loss. But also just hoping that new families find us to just be as welcoming as the first days and the days we're in now. And so just wanting everybody who's experiencing loss to know they are welcome here in whatever feels right. I know today we focused a lot on the moms groups and the men's social clubs. That's what just started some of the initial connection. And now we have so many other programs and ways for people to lean in. We used to call moms group like the gateway drug to like the other things. Now we'll get your husbands to come. But it's truly like, I do believe we have something for everybody, right? Whether it's a golf tournament or Angels in the Outfield for living children or, grandparents, we really do. So just lean in some way, and I think you will find the connection to be as powerful. But it doesn't necessarily have to be in a group. It can be through just reaching out to us directly. We connect with people one-on-one all the time as well. So just reach out, and we will help try and navigate and find what maybe you might be seeking or looking for.
And we'll add links to all of the ways to get involved in the show notes. We'll also add a link for families who maybe don't know where to start, so they can just join our family online and get connected to you and your family support team, and you guys can help connect them to the best fit. But thank you.
Can I add, I do have one more thing now.
Yeah.
Can I say that? The database, joining through our website would be the best way. And that's just a way to ensure that you can get information from us about as we scale. And one of the really neat things, we're still a really small team doing a lot of things, but when you submit that as a loss family, you are responded to by a loss family. So it's me or somebody else on the team who's had loss saying me too. So you get an immediate connection to somebody who's experienced loss. Then we can make sure you have all of the appropriate opportunities in your area or based on loss type, so we can kind of customize it. But just going through that will ensure that you get the information from us you might be seeking and an immediate connection. So again, maybe not a stranger on your doorstep, but an immediate connection to somebody who's experienced loss.
On your proverbial doorstep.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you both for your time today. And thank you for listening to this episode of the No Foot Too Small podcast. We talked a lot today about the isolation of pregnancy and infant loss. And so we encourage you to share this episode. There may be a family or a friend of yours who hasn't had the opportunity or the space to share their story, and this might be the way to start that conversation. If you are interested in supporting our mission, please visit nofoottosmall.org and click on our donate tab. And again, all of the helpful links we referenced today will be included in our show notes. We'll see you at the next episode.